Hi, everybody. We are so excited you're here, and I want to give you a warm welcome to the ACT and SAT 2023 Everything You Need to Know event. We are joined by our incredible partner, Test Innovators, today, and we are so excited for you to meet them. So, my name is Abby De Silva, and I'm on the Scoir team, and I'm going to be your host today. So, let's jump right into it. Now, for some housekeeping. Today, we are going to cover with Test Innovators what is included on each test, the ACT and SAT, and when is the best time to take these tests, what test optional really means, how Test Innovators can help you practice, and then I'm going to be covering how you can cope with test anxiety. Now, for some context setting. Our goal at Scoir is to build best-in-class software for college, search, discovery, and planning. But there are other parts of the college journey that we do not have expertise in, such as test prep. That information is needed for students throughout the college prep experience, and that's where Test Innovators comes in. We want to provide experts that can offer their support, resources, expertise, and technology in areas that you need help with. Test Innovators shares our mission and values, and we are very excited to have them connect with you today. This partnership is not a tech integration, so you will not see their platform in the Scoir network. If you want to learn more about Test Innovators and Scoir and our partnership, you can learn more at scoir.com/partners. Now I'm going to pass it over to Selena Murphy, Test Innovators Director of Marketing.
Hi, everyone. My name is Selena, and I am part of the team here at Test Innovators. I'm excited to talk with you today about the ACT and SAT. I'll start by providing some information about the test, and then I'll show you how to use our practice platform to prepare. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. To begin, I would like to share a little bit about what we do here at Test Innovators. We help students prepare for entrance exams, including the ACT and SAT. We have an online practice platform that provides each student with a personalized practice experience, which allows them to maximize their scores. In addition to working with students directly, we also partner with schools, nonprofit organizations, tutors, and educational consultants that help students prepare for entrance exams. So to start, let's go ahead and look at a timeline of when students prepare for and take the SAT and ACT. The first timeline is for those who start at the end of their sophomore year. It's really best to start early so that you have plenty of time to get ready. However, most students typically start their prep in the fall of their junior year. Either way, though, the first step is to take a diagnostic test. Because most schools accept both the ACT and SAT, we recommend taking a diagnostic test of each to see which test may be best for you. When you're creating a timeline for practice, make sure you plan on taking the test at least 2 times. Most students take the ACT and SAT 2 to 4 times, and ideally, you'll want to finish testing before your senior year. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the structure and content of each test so you can get a sense of what to expect. Starting with the ACT here, the ACT is 2 hours and 55 minutes, and that doesn't include breaks or the writing section, which is optional. So the ACT has 4 sections plus the optional writing section. Those sections are English, math, reading, and science. The questions are multiple choice, and the English, reading, and science sections have 4 answer choices, and the math section has 5 answer choices. You receive a composite or total score, as well as scores for each of the 4 sections, and the score ranges from 1 to 36. Okay, we can't talk about the SAT without first talking about the major change that is happening. The SAT is transitioning from a paper test to a digital computer adaptive test. International students are already taking the new digital test, and students in the US, Puerto Rico, and US Virgin Islands will start taking the digital SAT in March of 2024. Because US students will still be taking the paper SAT this fall, let's look at a breakdown of the paper test first. The paper SAT is 3 hours, not including breaks. It has 4 sections: reading, writing and language, math without a calculator, and math with a calculator. The questions are all multiple choice with 4 answer choices, and the 2 math sections also have grid-ins, which are student-produced answers. For the paper SAT, you'll receive a total score, as well as a reading and writing score and a math score. So as I mentioned, international students are already taking the digital SAT, and students in the US will be taking it starting in the spring of 2024. In addition to being computer adaptive, the new digital SAT is shorter, as it's just 2 hours and 14 minutes. It also contains just 2 sections: reading and writing and math. Each section has 2 modules, and your performance on the first module determines the level of difficulty of the second module. So that's the computer adaptive element. In addition to being shorter and computer adaptive, the new digital SAT also has different question types. Most notably, the reading and writing section has a short passage for each question, rather than a longer passage for several questions, which is what it's like on the paper SAT. It's also worth noting that students are allowed to use a calculator on the entire math section. So as you can see, the SAT is changing quite dramatically. Okay, next we'll talk about what test optional means. The college admissions process is ever changing, and one of the biggest recent changes has been colleges going test optional. But what does that really mean? When a college has a test optional policy, it simply means that students can decide whether or not to submit their ACT or SAT score reports with their application. So what does this mean for you? Should you even bother taking the ACT and SAT? Well, the short answer is yes. And there are many reasons why taking the ACT and SAT are still important. First and foremost, test scores really do serve an important purpose in the admissions process. They provide admissions teams with a better understanding of you. In addition to that, many scholarships require test scores as part of the application, and you want to make sure that you take advantage of as many scholarship opportunities as possible. And finally, if you don't submit test scores, it could potentially raise a red flag on your application. Essentially, admissions teams may wonder, why didn't this student submit their test scores? And the reality is that the vast majority of students still submit test scores to test optional colleges. One of the most notable test optional schools is the University of Chicago, which was the first highly selective school to go test optional in 2018. Interestingly, about 85 to 90% of students who applied to the school in 2019 still submitted test scores. As with any component of the application process, it's always best to check with the college directly. The University of Chicago has a lot of information on their website about the ACT and SAT. I've included the University of Chicago's response to the FAQ. Because standardized test scores are optional portions of your admissions process, does that mean I should still take the ACT or SAT? Here is what the University of Chicago says about that. The SAT, ACT, and other standard measures can continue to be an important part of the University of Chicago's holistic admissions process. These tests can provide valuable information about a student, which we and other colleges will consider alongside the other elements in a student's application. We encourage students to take standardized tests like the SAT and ACT and to share your scores with us if you think they are reflective of your ability and potential. We anticipate the vast majority of students will continue to take tests and may still submit their test scores to U Chicago. Okay, next up are the best practices for preparation. So first, I think it's always helpful to understand why it's helpful to prepare for the ACT and SAT. Preparation allows students to gain familiarity with the test, which helps them increase confidence and decrease test-related anxiety, which ultimately means that students are able to put their best foot forward on test day and demonstrate what they know. The preparation process can be broken down into 3 steps. Take a practice test, review your results, and do additional practice. So the first step, take a full-length practice test. Practice tests serve as the foundation of preparation. They are the best way to familiarize yourself with the test and to learn what you need to work on. When taking a practice test, be sure to do it in a quiet area with no distractions. Step 2, review the results. After taking a practice test, look at your results. Review your scores and analyze each section to identify what areas need improvement. Then study answer solutions for every question you answered incorrectly, skipped, or guessed. Also, be sure to learn test taking strategies, such as a process for answer choice elimination. Finally, the third step is to do targeted practice. Once you've identified the areas that need improvement, do targeted practice to fill knowledge gaps. Be sure to review content that you don't know and practice those specific question types until you're confident in those skills. Practicing for just 30 to 45 minutes each day can have a big impact on your scores. Finally, take another practice test and repeat the process until you reach your target scores. It's important to keep in mind that frequent, shorter practice sessions are more beneficial than just a few long sessions. Okay, so now that we know how to practice for the ACT and SAT, I'm going to show you how to use our platform to do that. Let me go ahead and switch over screens here. Okay, so this is our ACT practice site, and our SAT practice works the same way. I'm just using ACT as an example today. After you sign up for an account, you'll go ahead and log in to get started practicing. And after you log in, you'll land on a welcome page. And there you'll find some tips on how to practice, which of course I will be talking about today. So you can see those here. But you'll want to just go right into your practice dashboard to get started. So on the main dashboard tab is where all of the practice tests are. And as I explained earlier, practice tests are the foundation and the place to get started. So when you look here at a practice test, you'll see that it mirrors the actual test. So it has the same sections, same number of questions, and same amount of time. So to take a practice test, you just click Start next to the section. And then you'll have the option to take tests either online or on paper. And I'll be showing you how to take practice tests online today. After you read the section instructions, you can go ahead and click Begin Section when you're ready to start. And that will pull up the practice test. And you'll see that you have questions on the left, and for ACT Math, 5 answer choices here on the right. So it's pretty straightforward. After you solve the problem, you'll just click on the letter that you want to, for that answer choice you want to select, and then you go to the next question. So pretty straightforward there. We do have a few tools to help you practice test taking strategies. The first one is an answer choice elimination, which is really helpful if you don't know how to solve a problem. It's a great first step to just eliminate answer choices you know are wrong. So you can do that by clicking this X here next to the answer choice. The other tool that I want to show you is our highlighter tool. So you can see here as I move my mouse over to the question, it pops up and I can use that to highlight important information I'll need to solve the problem. And then finally, we have a come back later button here down below. So if you're working on a problem, you don't know how to solve it, it's taking a while, it's a good idea to come back to that later if you have time at the end. And so you can click on this button, it'll put a little orange dot here so you know it's a question you want to come back to. The other thing that you may have noticed is that as I select an answer, it will highlight that question above blue, so I can quickly see which questions I have and haven't answered yet. The other thing that's great to keep an eye on, of course, is your time. So you'll always see the time you have left up here. We do have a pause button, but on the actual day of the test, of course, you won't be able to pause the test. So I definitely recommend that students make sure that they're able to sit through the entire section and avoid pausing whenever possible. But of course, things come up. So if you use all your time, the section will just go ahead and end. But if you're ready before then, you can end and score. And what's great is that your section is scored immediately after you're finished with it. So you'll be able to look at your results right away. Which leads into step 2 of the prep process, which is to look at your results. So after taking a test, you'll want to, of course, see how you did. So here, you'll first see your score report. So for the ACT, you'll get your composite score, your total score, and the range is from 1 to 36, and then you'll also see a percentile, and then you'll see your section scores. After you look at your scores, you'll want to go through each section and do a deep dive into that section as part of the review process. So let's look at the science section here. On the section summary page, you'll see your results broken down a few different ways. So by question difficulty and by question subtype. And the question subtype can be particularly telling because it's quite possible that you just need some improvement in 1 or 2 areas. So that's really great to look at. And then if you took the test online, you'll get a timing graph so that you can see how you used your time and making sure that you're being mindful of your time management because that is such an important piece. So you can see here that the student did have the chance to get through all of the questions in this section before time was up. But there were a few questions, for example, question 8, that they spent quite a bit of time on and still answered wrong. So it's always great to review how your timing is going. After you look at this overview of the section, you'll want to go through and look at your answers. And so here you're able to go through the test, question by question, to review your answers, of course, paying particular attention to questions you missed. Those are shaded in red, and questions you left unanswered, which are in yellow. So every test question has a full answer solution. So down here at the bottom, so for questions you answered incorrectly or skipped, you'll be able to read the answer solution so you know how to do that type of question right next time you see something similar. And then that leads into the third step. So after you've reviewed your results, you've looked at questions you've missed, you'll want to do practice for those types of questions. So every practice test question also has this related follow-up exercise, which is focusing on that particular skill. And so you'll be able to do questions in that area to, again, really focus on that specific type of problem. So these are the practice exercises. And so here, again, you're focusing on that particular type of skill. And as you can see, it's very similar to the practice test. So, very, very similar functionality. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end and score. So again, yep, those are the practice exercises. The last thing I want to show you is the prep plan. And the prep plan you can think of as your virtual teacher. So it's providing you personalized recommendations on what you should be doing based on your performance. And so after you take a practice test, it will give you recommendations of what to do, including practice exercises to work on based on your test results. So it's just a really helpful guide as you practice. So if you're ever unsure of what to be doing, definitely go to your prep plan as it will guide the way. Okay, that was a pretty quick overview of our practice platform, but I hope that gave you a sense of how to practice for the ACT and SAT. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Selena. That was all super helpful information. Now that we've covered what is included in each test and when to take each test, what test optional really means, and how test innovators can help you practice, let's dive into how to cope with test anxiety. Full disclosure, I am not a mental health professional, so please be sure to talk to your medical professional and or your therapist about any anxiety you might be experiencing. I'll simply be sharing my experience with test anxiety, some tips that helped me when I was a student, and also some things that I learned having worked at a mental health company. First off, I want to express to you all that you are not alone in your test anxiety. I thought I was super weird for having so much test anxiety in high school, but the reality is a ton of your peers in high school are experiencing the same thing. In fact, 10 to 40% of high school students experience test anxiety. If you're not sure if you're experiencing test anxiety, here are some of the most common symptoms: cold sweats, racing thoughts, shaking, tension, trouble sleeping, irritability before, during, or after the test. These are just a few of these symptoms you might experience. Personally, I would get really intense tension headaches that I would get a lot throughout the school day and maybe after the school day had ended, just because I was tensing up and keeping all my stress inside just to try to make it through the day. So you might experience something completely different. A lot of people will have a lot of racing thoughts. They may feel very irritable. They might break out in a cold sweat. You might experience panic attacks. Um, all of these symptoms are totally normal and can point to anxiety. So, some of the reasons you may experience test anxiety include pressure to perform well from other people, perfectionism, and concern about getting into college and worry about people's impression of you. Personally, I was anxious for all of these reasons. And not only did I experience test anxiety, but I was also diagnosed with anxiety and depression. And having made it through high school, made it through college, and now in the workforce, I just want to tell you I made it through and I know you can too. So, here are some things that helped me with my test anxiety. First of all, I had to learn how to rest. Resting can be so difficult when there's so many pressures, when you really want to get into your dream school, and there's so many things that are going on in your life at the moment. Taking time to rest, even if it means stepping away after class and taking a deep breath in the hallway before you go into your next class. It can look as simple as that. It can also look like blocking time off on your calendar on a weeknight and saying, okay, I'm going to take care of myself during this time. I'm going to turn off my phone. I'm going to not study, and I'm going to take care of myself, whatever that might mean to you. Some other ideas for how to cope are hanging out with friends. Yes, you should step away from your work and spend time with friends. It's good to not think about the test and your studies sometimes. It's all about balance. And spending time with a community is one of the best things for your mental health. And this is a great habit to start now before you end up going to college and entering the workforce. Studying and taking practice tests is definitely part of how to cope. A lot of anxiety comes from, or sometimes anxiety comes from the unknown. Personally, I get super anxious when I don't know what a test is going to entail or what the testing environment is going to look like. So, one of the best things you can do for yourself is to take those practice tests like Test Innovators mentioned and get more and more familiar with the test so you know what to expect on test day. If you can go to the place where you're going to be testing, that is even better, not required, but practicing the tests can be very helpful. Just don't over practice. You need to remember to give yourself a break as well. You can also try reframing your thoughts. This is a really common cognitive behavioral therapy concept. So, if you're curious to learn more, you can Google that or talk to your therapist about it. Essentially, it's taking a thought that you have that's anxious, such as, I'm going to fail this SAT, and taking that thought and pivoting it a little bit by focusing on the facts. So instead of repeating to yourself, I'm going to fail the SAT over and over again, try focusing on the facts of the situation. For example, I took 3 practice tests and I'm as prepared for the SAT as I can be in this moment, and that's okay. So instead of saying, I'm going to fail this test, so predicting the future and like thinking poorly about yourself, think about the things that you already have done to prepare and the good things you've already done. Focus on what you can control and the facts of the situation, and that can help you get out of your anxious mind and into a more logical one. Also, going back to the first point of rest, practice self-care, whatever that looks like for you. Feel free to drop in the chat whatever you do to practice self-care. For me, I love to take long walks after work and just unwind and take in the scenery and get a little bit of exercise. Another thing I love to do is call a friend or a family member and talk about something completely different, or maybe talk to them like, hey, like, I've been experiencing a lot of test anxiety recently. I was wondering if you had any tips for me, or something like that. Something that also helps me is just distracting myself for a little bit and not thinking about the test for a little while. And that can be really hard. But if you find something that you can get really focused on and that you really enjoy, like for me, it's playing guitar or honestly playing a video game. That really helps me be distracted from something I'm anxious about. And doing that for a little bit of time can really help me personally step away and come at the situation with a new perspective. Of course, you don't want to distract yourself all the time. That's not a very healthy coping mechanism. What's important is that you have a variety of coping mechanisms that you can pull from. And I would highly recommend writing down all the things that you love to do to practice self-care and help you cope with anxiety, and have like things that help you cope with you at all times. So for example, if you're going to school and like those little squishy things help reduce your anxiety, keep one of those on you at all times. Or carry some essential oils with you if that helps you relax, for example. Here's some more self-care ideas that you can use yourself. Feel free to take a screenshot of this or add these to your self-care list. So that is the webinar. Thank you so much for attending. We are so thankful you're here, and we really hope that this was helpful for you. We're going to leave the event room open for another 15 minutes or so in case you'd like to chat with us in the event chat. Just so you're aware, we're going to be sending the event replay to you via email right after the event today, so keep an eye out for that. Thank you so much, Test Innovators, for joining us, and for everybody that's here, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.